Welcome back to Eco Family News. Our next guests are two moms with a passion for parenting, Barbara Nicholson and Lysa Parker, the founders of Attachment Parenting International, which is a nonprofit organization that promotes parenting practices that create strong, healthy emotional bonds between children and their parents. They have also recently co-authored a new book called Attached at the Heart, 8 Proven Parenting Principles for Raising Connected and Compassionate Children. Barbara Nicholson serves as the president for API. She has a Master's of Education degree specializing in learning disabilities and has been a breastfeeding and parent support group facilitator for over 27 years. Lysa Parker serves as the executive director for API, has a master's degree in human development and family studies, and is a certified family educator from the National Council on Family Relations. Prior to her involvement with API, she worked as a special education teacher, helping children with multiple handicaps and learning difficulties. Good morning, Lysa. Good morning, Barbara. Thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you, Kathy.
You sound like twins on the other end there. So, Barbara, I'm going to direct our first question to you.
Thank you.
And could you explain the basic philosophy of attachment parenting?
Well, let me just start by reading our mission statement. That's the kind of foundation for Attachment Parenting International, our organization. Our mission is to educate and support all parents in raising secure, joyful, and empathic children in order to strengthen families and create a more compassionate world. So how do we do that? Our philosophy is kind of boiled down in the essence of our title of our book, Attached at the Heart, that we really want to empower parents to listen to their heart, their intuition. So many parents call us, they're confused about whether to pick up their baby when their baby cries because they're afraid they'll spoil the baby. So we're really just trying to go back to those very basic tenets of nurturing, loving, responsive care for infants and young children. And that's really kind of the heart and the basic foundation.
And Lysa, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I think that what we're trying to do, what I know that our mission is trying to do, is change our society, to change our violent society into a more peaceful, compassionate society. And that what we do in those early years creates a foundation or a template, as others refer to it, for all human relationships. So on the short term, we're looking at how do we nurture our children, how do we stay in the moment, how do we stay conscious in our parenting day to day, which can be difficult to do. But on the long term, we're thinking about how can we change our community, how can we change it, how can we break the cycle in our own families, and then that trickles up into the community and to the larger society.
And how did both of you, now, I'll let one of you answer first, but how did you guys hook up and start on your whole, path of creating Attachment Parenting International to begin with?
All the story. This is Lysa. Well, Barbara and I met at a Lysa League meeting years ago. My first child was 6 months old, and Barbara had her second son with her, and we were both in Nashville. And it was through our experience with the Lysa League that opened our eyes to a new way of mothering and attachment parenting. So that laid the foundation and provided the role models. By going to these support group meetings, we were witnessing other mothers who were more experienced, who parented their children in a very different way than most people do in society. It was very gentle, very respectful, a very kind way of parenting. So that intrigued us, and that kind of set us on the path.
Anything to add, Barbara?
Well, I think one important component was that Lysa and I also were special ed teachers. And so in the classroom, we were seeing children who were labeled, learning disabled or emotionally disturbed. And it was rare to find a child who had a true dyslexia or a true physiological component to their disability. What we were seeing as we became mothers and saw these well-nurtured children, we began to realize that a lot of these children were just lacking in nurturing, empathic parenting in the home, and that was definitely impacting how they behaved in the classroom. So the more we got involved in La Leche League and started reading about attachment theory and educating ourselves about early childhood development, we realized, it's so frustrating because by the time they're in the classroom, so much damage has been done. It made us want to really work with parents who were in the stages of parenting infants and young children. So to work on the prevention end became much more appealing to us.
That's fabulous. I love that story. So next I'm going to direct a question to you, Lysa, on what are the greatest barriers in our culture for parents to embrace this type of parenting?
Well, where do I begin? There are so many barriers. I think there have been so many barriers in terms of how we connect with ourselves and how do we connect with our child at birth. All along the way, we have constant barriers, constant challenges to parenting, and we believe it begins when you're pregnant. You can start educating yourself and empowering yourself to plan and create the kind of birth experience you want. But along the way, too, once the baby's here, there are many parenting books out there that are just so confusing. And so we have thousands of parenting books that are saying, 1,000 different ways of being a parent or being a good parent or how to have raise the best kids. And of course now we've added one to that, but what is the challenge for parents is they just can't figure it out. They're just so confused. And so what our book is trying to say is listen to your heart. Forget what everybody else is saying. What is your heart? What is your instinct telling you to do? If your baby's crying, is your heart or your instinct telling you to pick that baby up, or are you being challenged by what you hear from everybody else? And if you pick up the baby, you're going to spoil the baby. So there's so many barriers. The media can create barriers. The television shows. One of the things we write about in the book is where do parents get their information? Where do moms get their information about birth and pregnancy? And most of them get it from the television. And I know that if that was my sole source of information, I think I would be scared to death to have a baby.
Yeah, well, and I think a lot of times when you're pregnant or thinking about getting pregnant or even having the baby, a lot of times you go to your parents too or elders for advice. And
right.
A lot of time, because we've grown up in a generation that's very different than our parents, that poses a whole nother issue.
Exactly.
Yeah. And Barbara, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think she really covered that well, that we're up against a huge cultural tidal wave, unfortunately. We're really swimming upstream. When you look at the skyrocketing C-section rates in hospitals now, it's really important that parents totally educate themselves about birth and early childhood and be well prepared, because if you don't, then others will take over for you. And it's really important. That's one of the reasons we felt establishing support groups and communities was so important, because you really need that those like-minded parents that you can network with and you can find out about alternatives in your community. We really emphasize that a lot in the book, to find your little network of people that are trying to be more conscious.
And what are some of the options or resources that either of you would suggest in terms of, like I know that Ricky Lake and Abby Epstein have created this amazing documentary, The Business of Being Born, and I know that's a great resource for women who actually both the woman and the man who are going into this, this experience together, for them to watch a movie like that, a documentary, that gives them kind of a really good view of both births, a home birth or a birthing center birth and a hospital birth. Are there other resources that you guys, want to kind of include in here?
Well, we have so many listed in our book that, I wish I had a little copy of it sitting right here to list some things. But what pops into my brain is a good place to start for any parent is go to parent educators, to childbirth educators in your community, whether it's Lamaze or husband coach childbirth or hypnobirthing. If you start really networking in the childbirth community, they're often wonderful starting point that they will take you on that journey to, there's all kinds of birthing options here. We have home birth, we have midwives in the hospital. These are some obstetricians that are more favorable to natural birth. And then that could should lead you into finding other resources like doulas, how important a doula is for a birth. There's Doulas of North America and other organizations, and of course La Leche League, and of course Attachment Parenting International. If you have a group in your community, then often those parents are very networked into all the options in your area.
Okay, that's great.
And of course, this is Lysa. Of course, we have our parent support groups around the country and some in Canada as well, and we have forums on the API website that parents can join and discuss just about any topic or issue that a parent might be going through right now. So there's an online network of like-minded parents,
and do you want to give that website address?
Well, you can go to attachmentparenting.org. and you click on forums.
That's great. What a wonderful resource for the community. And Barbara, how would you say that attachment parenting philosophy relates to a strong environmental message?
Well, if you look at each one of our 8 principles, I was just doing this the other day.
Oh, what are your 8 principles?
Oh, good. I'm glad you asked. Well, the first one is prepare for pregnancy, birth, and parenting. So if you're doing this and you're looking at your options and you're looking at the option of natural childbirth, it's a wonderful way to start being green in your own home, mainly because you're trying to birth this baby in the most natural way without using drugs or other interventions. And this kind of sets a template for the rest of your parenting journey. And not to say that everybody has the perfect birth, but if you just kind of start out with that mindset that that's what you want, and that continuum goes into breastfeeding. And if you're able to breastfeed, then what a great way to save the environment from so much, waste. And a lot of people are using disposable bottles and things like that. So just the act of breastfeeding is one of the most profound green things a mother can do. And then also just on that journey of feeding your children, trying to find natural, wholesome, whole grain foods is, again, another wonderful green way to avoid, eating a lot of fast food or processed foods. And you're setting that model in your family for changing the way Americans eat. Is just really atrocious. And that's a long slippery slope that we get into from our culture pushing fast food on us so much. And then the other things, like when we talk about nurturing touch, we talk about how and responding sensitively. Those aspects of attachment parenting it's really exciting to see that parents have this aha moment that, you mean I don't have to buy all the fancy strollers and all the gear, and of course you want to have a safe car seat for your baby, but leave it in the car. You don't have to lug all these devices around and spend a lot of money when you can just put your baby in a cloth baby carrier, and they're so much happier, they're content, you're getting that skin to skin, and you're being responsive to your baby. And also the mother and father have their hands free to do other things. And probably one of the most controversial aspects of our 8 principles is engaging in nighttime parenting, which means having your baby in close proximity. The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends that the baby be sleeping in the same room with the parents. And we're very proud that our organization has safe co-sleeping guidelines. So if your family wants to practice co-sleeping, being either in close proximity or in the bed sharing with the baby, then you really need to look at all these safety issues. And we have a wonderful brochure on our website about safe sleep practices that anybody can download and share with their family members or with their pediatrician. Everything we have on our website is all evidence-based. But again, if a parent can practice safe bed sharing, then they don't have to have a crib. And we hear so many parents say, "Oh, I bought this beautiful crib, and now I just use it for storing the laundry. I fold the laundry out of the crib, or I keep all the stuffed animals in the crib."
Oh, and so, it's so funny. I have to interject a few things here. When my daughter was born, which was 24 years ago, I had no guidance in any of these areas, but I did have like a carrier. And the first time we went out, and it was a very, limited carrier that went on the front of my body, and I almost hung myself because she was in there and she was crying and I couldn't get her out. And when I finally started taking her out, then my glasses got tight around my head because they were on a string.
Oh my gosh!
This is Lucy Ricardo wearing a baby carrier.
It was so funny. I mean, it wasn't funny at the time, and we didn't do well with a carrier. So you definitely have to, kind of look at a bunch of different carriers to find the ones that work best for you. But
that's really important, and it's so great now that we have all kinds of websites, and I know some of our support groups have baby sling libraries where you can go and pick one out and try one out for a few days and try different carriers out. And now you can talk to other moms and find out how to put one in care properly, and there's so much more help out there now.
I know.
Huge cultural shift that we've been through in the last 20 years.
Absolutely.
To have these options, it's so exciting.
And I even noticed the other day that Moby Rap, for instance, has a whole video on how to put it on YouTube.
Right.
So, I mean, there are just these great options that are, and resources that are available today.
And there's options, there's lessons on how to make your own baby sling. You don't have to go spend a lot of money. You can make one out of fabric you have at home or a sheet or something. You look at these mothers in Mexico and Asian countries that wrap their babies up in a shawl, and they're not going to a lot of expense, but their babies are just so happy and content, and again, what a wonderful environmental option.
Yeah, that's great. Now, have you gone through all of the 8 for us there? I wasn't counting.
Well, the next one would be providing consistent loving care. And I guess another environmental impact here would be in saving money. If a family has some creative options for, one parent being the primary caregiver or splitting care between the parents or other family members, you're saving quite a bit. I mean, who knows? I mean, thousands of dollars in child care. If you can just get creative about your child care options and not just go with the cultural paradigm of, well, you just find the local daycare center and every baby will just do fine. And in care, when we know there's a huge variety of child care options out there, and some of them are not very good for babies because, even in the best daycare centers, an infant is often in care with 4 or 5 other babies. So if in our culture, if a mother has quadruplets, we run to her with help and we just think, oh my gosh, how can she possibly function? But yet that's what babies in child care go through every day.
Mm-hmm.
So parents really need to be empowered about their options there.
Well, I know that in my particular area, a lot of the women do co-op watching, like, they'll drop their kids off at one of the mom's houses who can handle that amount of kids for an afternoon, and it really, it really saves for everybody.
Oh, yeah. And and if a mother, for instance, if she's a nursing mother and has to work, part-time or full-time, if she has some kind of cooperative care where she can, come and nurse the baby, and then you're helping keep down the health care costs. There's just so many wonderful side effects for finding care that doesn't include, your child being in a mass care center where there's so much contagious diseases and things like that. Let me just move on real quick. That was number 6, consistent loving care. Number 7 is practice positive discipline. And number 8 is strive for balance in personal and family life. And I think just one last comment there on striving for balance. It's another reminder to families to really cherish these early years with your babies and young children, because like us 3 women with older children, we know it's a blink of an eye. It goes by so quickly, and yet it can be one of the most stressful times if we don't take time for ourselves and try to spend more time just being home, just enjoying that nurturing time to be together, take walks, really nurture ourselves. And again, that's being more environmentally conscious, because we're trying not to be such consumers of things. We're just trying to, go back to a more simpler, nurturing lifestyle. I'm sure Lisa's got a lot more she could say about balance and that aspect.
Lysa, do you want to add anything there?
Well, about the environmental component of that, I think that the principle about responding with sensitivity is so important, because the goal of that is to teach the child empathy and compassion, and the only way that a child learns that is by being treated with empathy and compassion. And as a result, we believe that children will not only have compassion and empathy toward other human beings, but towards all living things. So we see that as a key component in developing this relationship of respect with the environment.
What a beautiful principle. I like that one. I like them all. So, Lysa, how would you define the aspects of your book in being different to other parenting books on the market?
Wow, so much research went into this book. One of the frustrations for us and for many parents is seeing these books out there that might have some research. And I have to say that there have been a couple of books lately, not from the U.S. I think they came out of the U.K. originally, that are really great books and include research. But ours is so comprehensive. I mean, and we often, Barbara and I often ask ourselves, why? With the Lucky League, it's just they're focusing on breastfeeding, but with attachment parenting, you have this whole array of different principles, and we could write a book on each and every one. So how do that was the question? How do we give it the justice that each principle deserves without going overboard and giving parents too much information? But we think that we did that in a fairly good job. We give parents a foundation of attachment theory because that was so exciting to us. We learned about attachment parenting through the Sears' books, but they didn't really talk about the research, the attachment theory research. And so when we started delving into it, it was like, wow, this is so incredible. This information, this research has been around for over 50 years, and we didn't know about it. Why isn't this getting out to parents? And so we knew that was going to be our mission, to get this information into the hands of parents so they can make their own informed decisions. We're at a point in our evolution as human beings that we have to take things into our own hands. We have to be our own best advocates and the best advocates for our children, because nobody else is going to do the job as well as we can. We have to be informed. We cannot keep giving up our rights as parents, to the culture. We have to hang on to our kids as tightly as we can.
And I think education is the key to empowerment.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
Change.
And it starts, we strongly believe it starts, at birth or prior to the birth. Once you can be empowered to be involved, active participant in the birth of your child, you feel like you can do anything, and you feel like the ferocious, mother bear or lioness, and in terms of advocating for your children. But the other thing that we added to our book too is just tons of resources available for parents. All kinds of books, recommended reading. Some of them are classics. So many people, we've seen the gap now with people, some of our staff members. They haven't heard of some of these people, and so we're excited to share this information. I equated it to learning who the founding fathers are of the country. I mean, these are the pioneers of this whole movement, like John Bowlby, like Mary Ainsworth, like Ashley Montague, Frederick Laboyer, and so many others. But the newer parents don't know about them. So we've included those books and website resources, because we just couldn't possibly include it all in our book. But parents have to be active participants in their education. At least they have a direction now in which they can go if they want to further investigate a particular topic or a principle.
I think that's great. Now, why don't you give our listeners both of the websites again? Also, Lysa, you have a website as well, so why don't we give all three of those?
Okay. Well, for general information about attachment parenting, they can go to attachmentparenting.org. They can find local support groups in their area, or if there isn't one, they can click on Start a Support Group and make an application to become an accredited leader. Attached at theheartbook.com is our book website, and they can go there. They can read an excerpt from the book. They can order it from our publisher, iUniverse, or from Amazon.com. Then I offer private parent consulting and coaching, and they can learn more about me and what services I offer at parentslifeline.com.
Great. And Barbara, do you have anything else that we want to include in all this great information?
Well, just maybe a little bit more. This might go into another question. I don't know if we have time for this other question, but what Lysa was saying about our book and how we stand out differently from other books, even on attachment parenting. There's several books on attachment parenting that are out there, but we were really proud that we were trying to give parents the big picture, the why you would practice this this style of parenting, beyond being, environmentally best or a more peaceful and compassionate way to raise your children, but we really believe it's the foundation for cultural change. That we really can't have peace in society unless we're practicing peace in the home. And one of the authors that really impacted us as parents, and we are proud that we mention her work in our book, is Dr. Alice Miller. She wrote a really profound book called For Your Own Good, Hidden Cruelty in Child Rearing. And we just were so amazed that this Swiss psychologist was able, or psychiatrist, was able to break down society's problems into the parenting practices in the culture. And her most profound experience personally has been Nazi Germany. So she talks about what the parenting practices were in Germany at the time, probably in the early 20th century, that really impacted the culture. Why were these people so willing to follow a dictator who was so abusive in his practices? Because a lot of these families were parented this way in the home. So you get used to following someone who's very authoritarian, and you lose the ability to really think for yourself. So to create a democracy, to have a true democracy, that means that you have to be practicing a more democratic and a more compassionate lifestyle in the home. That enables your children to grow up to really be able to think for themselves. And we're really excited about that aspect of our book, that we hope, when parents understand the big picture, why am I picking up this baby all the time when it would be so much easier just to let him cry it out, and then I have this obedient child, who reminds me when I say no, it means no. Not that we don't believe in discipline and guidance and, proper boundaries for your children.
Well, I think there's healthy boundaries and guidance.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you're not abdicating your role as a parent. You're actually being much more empowered to find peaceful, democratic, if you will, solutions to problems, and to look at the child where they are developmentally. That's another really strong component of our book, is that, the discipline you would use with a 2-year-old isn't what you would use with a 10-year-old. So you need to look at, where they are developmentally and what they can comprehend and respond to.
Exactly. Well, now both of you will be at the La Leche League conference in California on May 22nd through the 24th.
Correct.
Yes, we will. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and people can, our listeners can get more information on that by going to the attachmentparenting.org website and looking on the events page. Well, I want to thank both of you for joining me today, and I just wish you the best of luck with your new book, which is Attached at the Heart, 8 Proven Principles for Raising Connected and Compassionate Children from Conception to Age 5.
Correct.
Right.
Yep.
All right. Well, and again, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you,
Thank
Kathy.
you, Kathy.
Okay. Goodbye. I want to thank you for joining us today. I'm your host, Kathy Arnos, and you've been listening to Eco Family News on I Am Healthy Radio, where we work towards creating empowered parents, balanced families, and a healthier planet for our future. For more information about future shows, please visit either IamHealthyRadio.com or EcoFamilyNews.com. Thank you for listening.